Wave weather now on a Saturday evening. I've got 7 o'clock right here on the dock, and we are talking severe weather and a wave weather alert day just in time for our Sunday. Hi, everybody. I'm Wave News meteorologist Ryan Hoke here. We're going to spend the next half hour to 45 minutes detailing what you need to know about Sunday, what has changed about Sunday, and what kind of the good and the bad news is regarding Sunday's severe weather event here. There's two different rounds of storms. We're going to go over the timing. We're going to go over the threats. We're going to show you Futurecast. You'll hear some of my thoughts, and you'll see the forecast for the next 10 days as well by the time we get to the end of this thing. Looks like we've got a lot of folks in here already this evening, 250 roughly of you here within our social media platforms. This is Wave Weather Now. You can access this on our Wave Now Smart TV app for your Amazon Fire, Roku, or Apple TV connected television device there. Of course, the Wave Weather app for your smartphone or for your tablet device there. You can also see this live stream. Just hit watch live. And of course, wave3.com/weather now. That's all you got to do. It's that easy. And we're also, of course, on YouTube, Twitch, X, and Facebook this evening among multiple accounts. I can see all your comments here. So we're just getting started. Leave your questions, leave your comments. Hopefully you don't have any concerns, but I get it. It's a severe weather setup. There's going to be some anxiety around this. Let's hope that we can assuage some of those anxious feelings here. I want folks to leave this with a better sense of being prepared and with hopefully less anxiety than what you came up with. We want to ease some of the nerves this evening. That's my job here. We want to keep you calm and keep you prepared. All right, let's take you to what's going on now, and that's outside at Gazebo Fest on the waterfront. That is the Great Lawn here in downtown Louisville. And Gazebo Fest, of course, that big Jack Harlow and SZA kind of headlined event, if you will. Tonight looks pretty good out there. The downpour chance is pretty much gone just east of I-65. So I think the rest of the evening will be okay. We'll still watch it. And tomorrow, there's going to be some dry time, but we're going to have to watch this like a hawk with so many folks trying to be outside who may be holding tickets for that event. All right, this is the current view of the radar here, and things are quiet. We've had a couple of green and yellow dots pop up from time to time. As we zoom in, you'll see that area now of where we've got some more of those little downpours and showers is near Franklin County, and again in Spencer County near Taylorsville. In Louisville proper, we are looking pretty dry at this time, and I think that status quo is going to continue for the rest of the evening, as the zone of concern for any sort of pop-up 10-20% chance of a downpour is going to be likely east of I-65 and a little closer to I-75 in eastern Kentucky as it stands right now. So this is the wider view of things. We've got this weak little disturbance moving through that's attached to the warm front associated with tomorrow's severe weather event, by the way. No severe weather here yet, and we don't expect any tonight. You can sleep fine tonight. I know I'll be getting some sleep tonight because tomorrow night might be a long night for us here on the Wave weather team. Wave storm tracking team is going to be here covering this pretty late tomorrow night, as it were, because this timing continues to look to be near and just after midnight for potentially some of the strongest and most severe storms here. Look out to our west. This is eventually going to be the line of storms that marches through here tomorrow around midday. It won't be like this. It won't be these broken supercells like you see in Texas and even into Oklahoma right now, but you get the gist of it. We will see the leftovers of what's happening right now in the southern plains states tomorrow around midday, and then we get a fresh line of storms through here during the late night hours into the overnight of late Sunday into early Monday. We're going to have all the timing laid out for you in like 3 different ways coming up here in just a minute. I want to explain the setup first before we get into sort of listing out what's going to happen, because I think it's important to know where this is coming from, why this is happening. It's this area of low pressure that is ejected off of the plains here. You see it across eastern Colorado, attached to that warm front there. And of course, the cold front beginning to develop on the trailing end of that. The dry line's involved. You get the picture here. If you're a storm chaser, this is a setup that you would probably want to chase, as it's very active with discrete supercell thunderstorms. So this is the severe weather risk today. It's a system 1 through 5, 1 being marginal, 2 slight, 3 enhanced, 4 moderate, 5 high. We're under a moderate risk out west. So not including us, obviously, here. This is Kansas. This is Oklahoma. This is northern Texas near the Red River. This is southwest Missouri. And this is today through tonight. This is through actually 12Z tomorrow, which is roughly 8 a.m. tomorrow that this goes through. That's that 4 out of 5 moderate risk. Yes, there was some discussion that they might have gone to a high risk. They decided not to do that. So we'll see how that goes this evening, and what happens out there impacts what happens here tomorrow. So this is the latest on tomorrow. This is the 3 out of 5 enhanced risk. They have extended it to encompass nearly the entirety of the Commonwealth of Kentucky here. And what you've noticed they've not done is they've not upgraded us to a moderate risk. And there's a variety of reasons for that. I think that was a good call. This doesn't preclude an upgrade to a moderate risk later, but at this point, it really doesn't matter. The actual risk level doesn't matter. It's the impact, the timing, and how it affects you that matters. And these risks, while important and they come from the Storm Prediction Center, they're not the end-all, be-all. We don't want to get too hung up on those, all right? What I do want to do, though, is dig into the risk area and kind of break down where the highest threats of severe weather are going to be within that enhanced risk. So that enhanced risk is kind of a general area. Let's go inside of it. So the tornado potential, which is expressed as a percentage here, either 2, 5, 10, 15, 30, and they can go higher than that too, percent. You'll see that that black hatched area is out to our west. Whenever you have a hatched area of tornado threat, that means there is a decent chance of an EF2 or greater tornado within 25 miles of a point in that zone. We are not in that zone. We're not in that hatched 10% area. We are in the 5% area, sort of that number, that second level, that number 2 level risk for tornadoes here. I think that's important because something that has changed in the last 24 hours since I last saw you about this time last night is we've gotten a lot more high-res data. And that high-res data has actually done some good and some bad things for us. The good thing is that it has started to pretty significantly reduce the risk of supercell thunderstorms in our area tomorrow afternoon. It is not a zero chance, though. It is still there as a small chance, but it's not looking as likely as it did yesterday to see those supercell storms. That helps us reduce the large, violent tornado risk around here. So that's a good thing that has happened in the data, showing us that we may be too capped to get these supercells to form in the afternoon because you wouldn't have as much of a trigger. There's not a front somewhat nearby here. And you would also be behind the line of storms around midday. The atmosphere basically is going to have too much going on in a negative way for those supercells to form as it seems now. That's why the Storm Prediction Center has not extended that 10% tornado risk into our area. So this is looking more like a damaging wind risk for us. And when we're talking damaging winds, we're talking, for a severe thunderstorm warning, 58 miles per hour or greater. With this kind of setup, I believe we can achieve 70 miles per hour or greater in many areas. This might be a somewhat widespread wind event, but that, of course, hinges upon the interaction between the midday round of storms and the late night round of storms. How will those two play into each other? Will the midday round of storms be significant enough to disturb the atmosphere and keep the late night storms from being as bad? That's on the table. That's possible. I still think at this point that the late night round of storms has the better potential for severe weather and for more widespread damaging winds here. But this is what we're looking at, mainly a damaging straight line wind threat here with some embedded tornadoes in those lines of storms. These would be what we call QLCS tornado, quasi-linear convective system, basically a squiggly line of thunderstorms moving through. And in those little squiggles or wiggles, you would get the potential for a brief tornado. Those QLCS tornadoes, they're not fun to track because they're hard to see on radar. They develop very quickly. They dissipate very quickly. They're very small. So they can develop between radar scans. They can be so small that the radar is having a tough time picking up on the rotation. So a lot of the warnings that you might see tomorrow, if we happen to get in on tornado warnings with a squiggly looking line of storms late tomorrow night, would likely be generated based on the appearance of the radar, not so much do we see the rotation. And knowing what the environment is. Is there going to be any sort of inversion at the low levels, any sort of warm air aloft, cooler air here at the surface that would keep the tornado from getting down to the ground? There is a little concern. Again, this isn't a good way for us, that there may be a bit of an inversion to overcome that would reduce the tornado threat as well. That was in the National Weather Service Louisville's discussion today, and I definitely see where that could be something that they'll have to contend with. And that's, again, a good thing because it would limit the tornado threat. So just to pinpoint what we've been talking about here, if you're just joining us here, tomorrow's severe weather threat, 2 rounds of storms. We'll kind of play that out, play by play here in just a moment. But the main threat is wind. Secondary threat is isolated tornadoes. And then, of course, flooding is a major concern as well. Hail, not as great of a concern. However, I do think the hail threat would be highest in areas in southern Kentucky, which would be a little bit more to the south than you see in the Storm Prediction Center here with their hail potential for potentially significant hail. Because I think if there is going to be a supercell, promise I don't have that bad of an accent, supercell hail threat, it would be a little closer to the Tennessee border. And you'll see that in Futurecast here in just a short moment. So that's kind of a breakdown of the risks, the threats from the Storm Prediction Center. Those are their products. We'll show you our products here in just a moment. Monday, Memorial Day, busy holiday. The severe weather risk looks to be east of us by that point. This front is going to take its time to get through here, so it will not truly pass through until some point in the day on Monday. So we will have a few more scattered storms, but the ingredients for severe weather would kind of be shunted to the east because of the cool pool of air that would be expelled behind these storms. And of course, sort of the greatest, wind shear being over to our east as well. So just a little note there about our Monday. Okay, so this is tonight. Obviously, things will calm down pretty quickly. We won't have much in the way of that isolated downpour risk. So here's the latest on the alert day. This is the breakdown of timing, sort of the bottom line, easy to read version of this. I know this is a wide window, but we're going to break it down more granularly here in just a second. This is Sunday at 11 a.m. until Monday at 4 a.m. I know that's like almost 24 hours, but again, there's going to be some quiet time in the middle of this. Especially, if the supercells do not form or form just outside of our area closer to the Tennessee border here. We're looking for 2 rounds of storms. There would be a midday and afternoon round of storms with, a wind threat and an isolated tornado threat, but that midday round may not be all of that impressive. We may get some severe thunderstorm warnings out of that, and they may intensify as they march across I-65 toward the I-75 corridor, but I don't think that'll be the main show. However, with that said, there's always a caveat in these setups. They're so complex. If these storms do bloom into more of a severe weather threat during that midday, early afternoon time frame, if they start to explode more of our area as they move in and they become even more widespread, that would disturb the atmosphere and start to potentially limit what the late evening and overnight hours might do. A lot of push and pull on this. One thing depends on the other. It's confusing, it's complex, it's tough, and it makes for a really difficult forecast for us as well here. All right, late night round, that's the main event, if you will, here with potentially widespread damaging winds and isolated tornadoes. All right, I do want to get to a couple of your comments before we push on here because I know so many folks are in here this evening. It's a busy Saturday evening, over 840 folks in here. So many folks trying to get the information here. Anita is asking, hey, I'm trying to make it to church for the 11 o'clock service. Would it be better to go to 9:30 service? I'd go to the early service tomorrow if I were you. Not necessarily because it's going to be like a, super bad storm or anything. Just to give you some padding, just so that when you get out of that service, you'll still be ahead of the storms and you can make it home without having to drive through, any sort of storms that'll be moving in that might be strong to potentially even briefly severe. So I would pick the earlier service if I were you. Shonda says, hey, Ryan. Hey, Shonda, how are you? Good to see you in here from Indiana. Dave and Jean are watching from Carrollton, Kentucky. Hello. Ashley is asking about notice some changes for tomorrow, good or bad. We just went over those. Looks more like a wind maker, not as much of a tornado threat. However, there will be some embedded tornadoes within these lines of storms. And if that happens, it's possibly not as strong of a tornado threat, but there might be some isolated tornadoes, plural, unfortunately, within those storms. So still not discounting the tornado threat by any means. It's just at this juncture, at this point, not looking like this big, violent wedge sort of situation with big, individual supercells moving through. That doesn't look to be as much of a problem as it may have been based on the latest data. Okay, so we've gone through a couple questions. We'll get to more of you guys here in just a second. I know there's a lot because it is a lot. It's a lot to digest. I get it. We have been working feverishly here to make sure that you have not only the latest information, but the correct information. That's important. This is one way to sort of plot out how the storms will be in our area by percentage of probability. So, this midday round of storms is most likely around noon, 1, 2 o'clock. Anywhere you see a red bar, by the way, is the severe weather sort of timing zone. So any storm that would develop in that zone, wherever you see these red bars here, timing-wise, could be severe. And that's why we do it that way. You're probably looking at 5 and 7 o'clock and going, whoa, okay, that's a pretty low chance, 30%. Yes, it is. I think there's going to be a break somewhere late afternoon, early evening here between round number 1 around midday and round number 2 late at night. The only problem I see with that is there is still, and I can't get rid of it completely, there is still at least a small chance for some supercell thunderstorms to get going in that period. However, with the cap of warm air aloft limiting their vertical development to form, and potentially the atmosphere seeing some sinking air behind, and possibly some cloud cover behind that midday round of storms, that's kind of precluding me from going any higher on that chance. There's just too much bust potential for those supercells. That's a good thing. You don't want supercells, period. So I'm glad to see that chance go down quite a bit. That's good. But by the evening hours, we will have quite a bit of warm, moist air pumping in. The atmosphere will be recovering. We see any sun tomorrow, that's a bad thing. You don't want to see sun in the afternoon tomorrow. If you see it, that's charging up the atmosphere for the late evening storms. Because the more the sun is able to charge the atmosphere in front of those as they move in, the longer they can exist in our area in a severe state. I do believe at some point, as these storms are moving through, they may start to weaken late at night just because we'll be so far from sunset. But there's a lot of momentum with these because they'll have a cold pool behind them, and we'll have some warm, moist air ahead of them to keep feeding them. But without the sunlight, that at least removes one factor that will keep them going indefinitely, right? So they will at least start to weaken, I think, as they start to push through some of our counties, especially in southern Kentucky. But that's not guaranteed at this point. And I think that'll be the worst round we see. What I'm about to show you right now is Futurecast. And Futurecast here is one idea of what might happen tomorrow. Okay, so one idea, one model, what might happen tomorrow. There are many hundreds of models. There are many dozens of ideas right now. This I'm about to show you is the North American Mesoscale model 3-kilometer version. It's a high resolution version of what we call the NAM model. It is doing what I think is the best job in representing what will happen tomorrow. We also have the graph model, GRAF, that comes from the Weather Company. All the TV stations with this graphics system can show it. It's usually okay. It did all right earlier today with it. And then the latest run that came out, the 18Z, I think it didn't do a very good job. So I'm kind of throwing that out for now. I think it's close, but it's not doing a great job. The HRRR, that's the high resolution rapid update model there. I think it's got too many storms and too much severe weather happening back to back to back to back to back, and it's violating the laws of thermodynamics. I actually wrote that down, violating laws of thermodynamics on the 18Z run of that today. So I don't think that's a great model to look at the moment. I think it's got the timing down pretty well. I mean, all these models have the timing pretty much in lockstep. So the timing's not so much the concern. It's how severe the storms are and how the radar will look. That's kind of the squabble at this time. Okay, so with that in mind, this is the North American Mesoscale model 3K or 3-kilometer edition. And it shows line of storms moving in, midday, 1, 2 o'clock. Something to note on this, just kind of where my eyes go, there's a lot of this green in front of these storms here. And what that tells me is that these storms may exist behind an outflow boundary meaning that the warm, moist air ahead of the storms wouldn't be able to be capitalized upon because the storms would already be what I call outflowish. So they may be weakening on approach. However, storms can catch back up with that outflow boundary and start to propagate along that and start to strengthen again. And that may very well happen as these cross I-65 tomorrow. So these will be strong. This first round, midday strong. But I wouldn't necessarily put all my chips down on a severe weather risk if you were to make a bet on this, because I think there's some elements arguing against that with, old storms moving in. Those don't have a great history of producing super crazy widespread severe weather. It has happened, but more times than not, they're usually in a weakening mode, but they can get perked back up when they hit the heating of the day and they hit warm, moist, unstable air. We'll have that in eastern Kentucky, so these may try to amp up a bit with some damaging winds, a few severe thunderstorm warnings, possibly an isolated spin-up tornado in this. We get through that after about 4 o'clock. That'll be out of here. And then something that, I'm seeing signs of, not only on the NAM model, but I've definitely seen it on the HER, and I started to pick up some of it too on the graph model, the 18Z today. I thought I had it way too far north, and that's why I threw it out. But you see these cells down here, and this is 5 o'clock in the evening. They're closer to the Tennessee border, closer to Hart, Greene, Taylor, and Adair counties. Those could be supercells. And my concern with that is those guys would be all by themselves. They would be forming along a boundary that's left over from that initial midday line of storms that gets laid out parallel to the Kentucky-Tennessee border there. And those would be in an environment with a whole lot of wind shear and a lot of instability. So I am still at least a little bit concerned about supercells tomorrow. I do not want to throw that idea in the garbage and take it to the curb. This is not done yet. Still cooking. But if there's going to be a supercell threat tomorrow, in my opinion, and this forecaster's opinion, based on what I've seen and how the atmosphere generally operates in a situation like this, it would be southern Kentucky, closer to the Tennessee border. I don't know how far north that would come, by the way, but I think it's far enough south that I've taken that rain chance down to 30%. I think it would be 30% or less of our area would be exposed to that at this time. And that would be kind of the southern third of our viewing area here, well south of Louisville. But we'll see. Like I said, the graph data tried to come north, but the reason it was north with them is because the line of storms also didn't go very far north. So it laid that boundary out like over the parkways instead of over the Tennessee border region there. So, big difference there. But I think that line of storms will be widespread enough to keep that boundary, across our extreme southern counties. And again, these supercells, there's still a low chance they may not develop at all. And if you're just joining us or you're not real sure what I'm talking about on this supercell deal here, supercells are individual super storms, if you will. They're like big, kind of kidney beans on the radar. They do harbor the highest tornado threat of any type of thunderstorm you can have. They have the strongest tornadoes, the highest tornado threat. So you don't want those at all. These are what happened in the Great Plains. They're happening in Texas and Oklahoma right now, believe it or not. But again, I think that's a low threat here. I don't think that's going to be the predominant thing that we see tomorrow. And these probably won't exist, but I got to throw that out there. Okay, so once we get through that period, however long that lasts, whether it's a couple hours, 3 hours, whatever, where you kind of have that tiny supercell risk to our south, we do enter into another calm period here. So again, basically from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m., I do think there's a pretty good chance tomorrow, 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern, that we'll have some calmer weather. Gazebo Fest is going on. I know I did see a question in the comments here about Gazebo Fest. There's been like 30,000 comments. Oh, here it is, actually. Funny enough. Elizabeth Early here says, should we stay away from Gazebo Fest tomorrow? Jack Harlow goes on at 9. Well, as it happens, here's the Futurecast at 9. If you're holding tickets for Gazebo Fest tomorrow, I would still go, because the expectation is that we will have some dry time. With that said, have the Wave Weather app. We can send these custom push notifications. If we're going on with live coverage, we'll be able to send that a notification so you can watch that live coverage while you're at the event and see where these storms are. You can tell where the warnings are. Just be ready with that app, watching the radar, every, 20, 30 minutes, just like pop it on and be like, okay, we're good. Or, okay, here comes some storms. And when they start to get a little bit closer, have that plan to go back to your vehicle. All right. I'm not quite sure what Gazebo Fest's severe weather plans are. I think our news department may have more info on that. I'm just the meteorologist here. But with that in mind, keep an eye out, be vigilant if you're going to be out tomorrow at either Gazebo Fest or Abbey Road on the River in Jeffersonville. I wouldn't completely say no to it. I wouldn't, because you've paid for those tickets, and there's a pretty good chance of a dry period for a good chunk of the afternoon and evening tomorrow. That's a good thing. That can help you out quite a bit here. I don't want to pour cold water on anybody's plans when there's a pretty good chunk of calm time, embedded between these two lines here. So that's, kind of my sermon on Gazebo Festival tomorrow. So 9 p.m., here's Futurecast. That line of storms is out to our west. This is the main show, as it were. After about 11 p.m., those will start to cross into our counties. I believe, and don't quote me on this, that the Gazebo Festival has to pretty much wrap up pretty close to 11 p.m. because of the Louisville Metro noise ordinance. So that will certainly be a good thing if that's wrapping up at that time, because I know other music festivals in more rural areas, they can go like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm talking about you, Bonnaroo. I was there in 2011 last time. But with that late timing of the storms, that helps out Gazebo Festival, because that hopefully, fingers crossed, will get everybody enough time after Jack's set ends to get back to your cars, get home safely, and then the line of storms rolls through. That would be the optimum scenario. That is very possible with what we're seeing now in the data. So this is around midnight, big line of storms moving through. Notice, unlike the first round that I showed you around midday here, that there's none of this like big green blob in front of it. It just goes very quickly from a little bit of green to yellow, orange, red fast. That means that these storms are developing on kind of the leading edge of the outflow here. They'll have the best chance to be severe with some widespread, potentially damaging winds of 70 plus miles per hour. Yes, 74 miles per hour is a hurricane. So hurricane force winds, if you're going to get into a little bit of hyperbole here, are possible tomorrow. All right. And that's just kind of how it works with the wind speed, 70 plus miles per hour possible here. Now, see how this is looking. This is what I'm talking about with, the storms potentially running into either some capping or some more stable air tomorrow evening left over from the midday to early afternoon line of storms. Notice how this section up here doesn't look as strong as it once did. Of course, still going gangbusters, western Kentucky here into Grayson County. It is possible that these storms will start to run out of gas as they're moving in, because it's just so late. And the capping or the inversion for the night will start to get going. We've lost the sunlight. That's possible. That's like we've been talking about. There's some bust scenarios here. This is one of those bust scenarios. That's a good thing. You want to bust. We're not cheering for these storms to come in and do widespread damage, but should they be able to capitalize on all the energy we see in the data, 70 plus mile per hour winds would be possible there. Okay, 3 o'clock in the morning, we're wrapping this stuff up. It would be Southern Kentucky who sees the finality of the severe weather, 4 a.m. That's why this goes until 4 a.m. Monday on our timing here. And then boom, we're pretty much done by Monday morning. Few pop-up scattered storms Monday afternoon. So this is the overall severe risk. We've been in this enhanced risk of severe weather here from the Storm Prediction Center for a bit. They have not upgraded us to moderate, like I said earlier, and I do not believe they will do so at this point based on the current package of data. We're going to get more data, what's called the 0Z data, during the 8 and 9 o'clock hour here. So all of the models I just mentioned, the NAM, the HRRR, the graph, all of those are going to get refreshed. They're going to have new weather balloon data injected into them. So we'll be able to see the initial condition of the atmosphere in that data better. So I always am not a fan of what's called 6Z and 18Z data because there's no balloon launch associated with that. So these weather models don't have the upper air data updated in them during those 2 runs per day. So I really like the 0Z, really like the 12Z. Those are good model runs. They have fresh data, kind of resets everything, gives you hopefully a more accurate look at the atmosphere moving forward. 11 a.m. to 4 a.m. I know that's a big period, but as we said, it's 2 lines with some dry time potentially in the middle there, several hours worth, if not more. Damaging winds of 70 plus miles per hour, large hail, isolated tornadoes, flash flooding. Flash flooding may be a big deal if these storms try to orient more horizontally, like east to west. tomorrow evening as they plow through. And if there's multiple lines, that could exacerbate things. On the National Weather Service call today in Louisville, the forecaster there, Brian Shetmer, was talking about the fact that flash flood warning guidance, essentially, I'm not using the exact right term there. I know what it is, but I can't think of it at the moment. Essentially, how much water, how much rain it takes to get a flash flood. In southern Kentucky near the Green River is only like a half inch in an hour, which is not much. These storms will put down more than that. So flash flood warnings may very well be the thing that we see down, especially in southern Kentucky, where it's just been so saturated lately. I mean, this has been like the wettest spring in a while here. Certainly no drought potential this summer, the way things look, in my opinion. Okay, severe weather ingredients. This is just kind of a bottom line. If you're interested about a little of the under the hood stuff, moisture and wind shear are there, and then some. The atmosphere has no problems with those. Lift, I didn't put it very high just because we will not be, we'll have a warm front moving through, kind of first thing. So we'll have that first line of storms, but we'll have really no super great boundary for, these storms to develop on to create lift during the late afternoon, early evening. So that kind of creates some of that wobbly uncertainty about supercells, which I think are a very low chance at this point. I think the better chances for those not to happen. And then the cold front's going to wait until Monday to move through. So that'll be the source of lift for that. So the lift is really going to be generated in a lot of cases here by these prefrontal waves. Basically, storms get out ahead of these fronts and kind of create their own boundary, if you will, for storms to form on. That's kind of be how that works. And then instability, I didn't put very high, but I did put high just because capping may be an issue. That warm layer of air aloft literally caps the storms from trying to push upward and develop vertically and keeps them from being as bad as they could be. So if we were to rank the threats tomorrow, here's how I would do it. Notice that the wind and the flooding threat are 4 out of 5. If I think the flooding threat is the most sort of surefire thing, because even if the storms aren't severe, there's going to be some heavy rain out of them. But the storms, they do look likely to be severe, at least one or both of these rounds here. So wind damage is our primary threat with that, followed by hail. But I think the hail threat will be maximized in southern Kentucky and southwest of us. The tornado threat, I brought this down a bit from yesterday, just because, again, that supercell threat, not looking as high as it did. And this is looking more like a linear storm setup with lines of storms. You will definitely have some rotation in those lines, though. There will be spin up tornadoes, and there could be a few of them in our area. And those are not fun to track because they're hard to see on radar. They are very fast. They're fleeting. They last for only seconds to a couple minutes. And, you can have also embedded supercell structures too. I do need to at least, air this out too. On the southern edge, especially of any line of storms, you get these tail end Charlie supercell structures where it's like a supercell embedded within a line of storms. And that could have a higher tornado threat, higher tornado potential, but that wouldn't be as widespread as, say, several different supercells around. So that just overall brings down the tornado threat a bit, but it is definitely still there. It's on the maps. It is on there as a 2 out of 5. We'll adjust this as necessary over the coming days here, or coming hours, I should say. We're getting close to this. This is probably what you're wanting to see. This is the overall timing, because I know timing is everything when we've got outdoor events like the Gazebo Festival and Abbey Road on the River here. So this first line of storms arrives between 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. They could be strong to potentially severe, but they're not going to be the main show. There will be some damaging winds, possibly an isolated tornado threat with those. We'll watch it. Between 4 p.m. and 11 p.m. tomorrow, this is the quiet time, possibly, hopefully, and there's a pretty good chance of it. This is because the first round of storms would have some sinking air and some rain-cooled air that would kind of prevent things from being as nutty during that period. But we are still watching for that small supercell potential, which as of this 18Z data package I was looking at, I think would be closer to the Tennessee border and just outside of our counties, if not scraping a few of our counties like Greene, Taylor, and Adair in Kentucky. So we'll watch that. Again, I think it will be quieter. I don't want to call it quiet because we could still have some warnings at that time, just not as many. And then between Sunday at 11 p.m. and Monday at 4 a.m., this is what we believe may be the main show here, with the second round of storms having, pretty much all the energy they need from that quiet time. If there's any, sunshine, which there might be quite a bit, That would heat up the atmosphere. There would be enough instability to get those to roar through here with widespread damaging 70 plus mile per hour winds and isolated tornadoes. So again, that is late Sunday night when that arrives. The hope here, like what I was talking about earlier, is that we can get through Gazebo Festival and get Jack Harlow off the stage, all finished with his set, and everybody in their car before these storms hit after 11 p.m. on Sunday. So there is that opportunity for that there. I don't want folks to come away from this thinking I have to cancel my plans for Gazebo Festival. Don't cancel them. I would say have the Wave Weather app keep track of things. And if it looks like the storms are approaching faster, we're going to be sending push alerts to that area anyway. So if storms are approaching faster than we think, and it's going to threaten the attendees of the festival, or if there's a pop-up storm during that quiet period that's going to threaten the festival, we'll send you something, all right? So that you know to go take cover, get back to your car. Plenty of time to do that, hopefully. So keep that in mind, okay? And then that's that. After 4 a.m. Monday, we do have a few scattered storms in the forecast by Monday afternoon, but those probably won't be severe or strong even. We'll be done. And for the foreseeable future, we would be done with severe weather around here. We can see out about 10 days on that. And right now it looks like things will be getting a bit better after that point. I'm going to talk about some safety here, and then we'll get to a few of your comments and questions. This might be the most important thing I say in this entire, long-form streaming broadcast here. Have multiple ways to get alerted, because that is going to be what ultimately ensures your safety and that you get the alert. Wave Weather app. Turn on your alerts in the settings. I know a lot of phones these days, have different ways of silencing alerts and things. Just make sure that you are in a mode on your phone that you can hear those alerts from the Wave Weather app, okay? Especially if this is going to be late at night and you're trying to get to bed. NOAA weather radio with battery backup. Please, please, please have one of these. This is like a smoke detector for storms. I know it's kind of old school, but they're pretty well digital these days. You can program in your county pretty quickly. It's a lot easier to program these than they used to be. This is not 2005 anymore. It's 2024. These are a lot more user-friendly, okay? And, internet goes down, cell networks go down, infrastructure is infrastructure. It is susceptible to damage by these storms, but a NOAA weather radio is another layer of protection because those broadcast from centralized broadcast towers that can be in different spots than where your cell tower is. So it kind of is a nice second layer of a backup. And then charge all your devices, phones, tablets, laptops, necessary medical devices. Okay, so that is what we have talked about here. We've gone through the severe weather threat in pretty good detail. I'm going to leave up this alert day graphic here and then get to some of your questions. Okay. All right, let's get to Michaela. Michaela, we were just talking about that. This is mainly a straight line wind event, and it could be a ferocious one if everything comes together the way it could Sunday night. This is not a guarantee, all right? I want folks to realize that this is not a surefire thing. We'll have more information on this in the morning that I think will be a whole lot better. And even tonight during the 11 o'clock news on Wave, we'll have better information because the 0Z models I just talked about that come out during the 8 and 9 p.m. hour, I'll be able to have all of that data in, ingest it, interpret it, and make my forecast based upon what I see the trends doing in that piece of data there, okay? So right now, looks like mainly straight line winds as the primary threat. But yes, there will be some isolated tornadoes potentially in this as well. You see the word tornado twice, can't point, on this graphic over here. It's definitely there. Definitely a risk of tornadoes tomorrow, okay? Let's see here. Todd says, always a pleasure to see you, just not under these circumstances. Likewise, Todd. Todd's a good friend of Kevin Harned's. Let's see. Jordan Gunther. This is a good question because I did see some data about this today. What are the chances of possible supercells forming ahead of the main line between 11 and 1? There is a chance. I believe it was the graph model that comes from the weather company, formerly IBM, that showed some front-running supercells ahead of that. It's tough because these would be moving, these would be trying to develop at 11 p.m. That's late after dark. Really, supercells do best in a sunny, less disturbed environment. This won't be a perfect environment for them tomorrow evening, but it is possible. We have seen supercells at night around here. 2021 in December comes to mind. I think 2022, it also happened at night and during the off season even. This is the prime season, by the way. This is severe weather season here. So I think it's a low chance. I've seen just one piece of data today with those. We'll see how it goes. I don't think that's going to be as big of a deal, thankfully. Angie, do you think this is going to be more of a Kentucky event instead of Indiana? Well, we can break it down in two parts, okay? So Kentucky, in this forecaster's opinion, Kentucky has the best chance of seeing tornadoes, all right? Because Kentucky would be on the southern side of this system, closer to the Gulf of Mexico, farther from where there could be rain-cooled air from this midday round that would disturb the storms. So I really think Kentucky has the higher tornado threat, especially if any supercells try to get going tomorrow near the Kentucky border. I think there's that chance. I don't think it's anywhere near a guarantee. It's a low chance. So that's kind of Kentucky's version of this. Indiana, I think, has the highest threat of damaging winds. All right. So the most widespread damaging wind reports may very well be in Indiana because the storms would go through Indiana first. And if they do try to weaken somewhat as they move through that late night round with the widespread damaging winds, Kentucky would be spared more than Indiana. But again, I think that's the main show. I think there's going to be widespread damaging winds. Should the atmosphere not be like completely crazy capped tomorrow and nothing form, which I don't think that's likely just because there's going to be so many boundaries around to kick these storms off. All right. It's just that kind of mid-afternoon to late evening lull that won't have a whole lot around to kick those storms off here. But if the cap breaks and we do see a few supercells, I think they're most likely in southern Kentucky. Again, very low chance on that. Jeff asked this twice, and I finally got to you. Sorry about that, Jeff. Is a derecho a possibility? This is always asked. I mean, yeah, it's a possibility. Derecho, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a Spanish word, but it basically equates to a big windstorm, and the National Weather Service has this very strict criteria on what is a derecho and what is not. I do not know that derecho criteria off the top of my head. I had to learn it in college, and I let the National Weather Service deal with that. They're the ones that make that call, that designation. That's not my job to do that. But with that said, it's a very long tracked windstorm with a line of storms producing a certain number of damaging wind reports over a certain period of time. And it is possible, but we'll see. That's a tough thing to predict in advance, especially when we've got some push and pull between two rounds of storms. I don't think, by the way, that initial round of storms would be a derecho. If it were, it would be out to our west where that would be, and it would be kind of falling apart when it gets here. There'd be a break in that wind damage, and then it may restart or refire over I-75 near Lexington or just east of I-65 in some of our counties too. That's that second round. If there were to be a derecho, that would probably be considered one if it met criteria. Again, a lot of ifs and ands on that particular thing here. Okay. Yes, Sarah Morgan asks, so we want no sun tomorrow. Correct. No sun. You want a completely cloudy day. You want, first of all, what do you want is those midday storms to trend later. You want those suckers to come through around 2:33, 4 o'clock even. Like, delay that stuff, please, for the love of all that is holy. And have those be a little bit more intense than they would be otherwise, which is possible. If they delay, they would be more intense. The atmosphere would have more time to reprime them up, perk them up, and they'd be more severe coming through here. So you would get severe weather with those, but it would disturb the atmosphere enough that the late night round would pretty much just be on life support when it gets here. That's what you want. And you'd want cloudy skies in between all of that. So clouds, you'll want the clouds, okay? I'm not going to answer any specific county or town questions. There's too many variables at play to get into that right now. Unfortunately, we won't be able to get into that really more until this stuff's on the radar tomorrow. Jeff says, thanks on the derecho thing. You're very welcome. Jordan, again, I've seen models with less coverage midday tomorrow. So if we don't get any storms around midday, does that increase the supercell risk further north? Oh, that's a good question. It just depends on the capping tomorrow. That's really more of a capping sort of deal there. If there's that warm layer of air aloft, that would prevent those supercells from forming around mid-afternoon to early evening. That would be the thing that limits it. And also, there's not a whole lot of a trigger for that unless these storms, which I've discussed earlier, the midday round, they could lay a boundary out over parts of extreme southern Kentucky near the Tennessee border where you could have some formation. But if you had capping, that wouldn't matter. It wouldn't happen. So we'll see. Again, this is so tough because there's like three things all trying to work together to sabotage one another, right? And we're here trying to predict the future with that. It's tough, right? A lot of players on the field, a lot of that stuff can't be seen until it's kind of day of, if you will. I always say, and I learned this while I was storm chasing over the years. I started that when I was 17, still do it to this day. Not going this year because of my schedule, but the morning of a severe weather event is when you know your best information. The night before, still some variability in that. The morning of is when it gets best. Oh, Todd's in the room again. What is the criteria for turning a severe thunderstorm warning into a considerable threat? He's testing me. So the considerable tag from the National Weather Service, when do they put that on there? Usually I see that when we're going 70 plus miles per hour wind. Gust potential, we've seen that. We could very well see that tomorrow night. Considerable tag on there. And then if the hail potential is like 1.25 inch or bigger, like we're talking like golf ball, ping pong ball size hail, that's when a considerable tag can be put on that thing. And then you've also got the tornado possible tags that can be put on there, like pre-tornado warnings or junior tornado warnings, as it were. Okay, so Toby, I'll bite on this one. So he's asking, so will there be a break between 4 and 5 p.m. because I'm going to a graduation party tomorrow at 5 and the pool will be open? I think so, because there is that break. In fact, I'll put up the timing graphic again, and then we're going to wrap this up here shortly, by the way. We're getting to the end of this broadcast here, but I'll answer a couple more questions at least. There's the timeline. You see between 4 and 11 p.m. is that kind of quieter period. So yeah, go there. Go to that graduation party, have fun, but just have the Wave Weather app. It's got lightning notifications, warnings. We'll send custom push alerts. That's hard to say. To locations, as we can tomorrow, because there may be some very active periods where we're just on our live stream and just on TV, and I don't have enough hands. I'm not a squid or an octopus. I don't have more hands to be able to do this stuff. But we'll try our best on that. And obviously, once we go into wall-to-wall coverage, just watch our live stream and check out the radar and the app to get the latest on where those storms are. But I think you will be in a quieter period. Michaela, thank you. She says, kudos to Ryan. Could imagine trying to do what meteorologists do. This is a tough time of year. This is kind of our peak for severe weather. So yeah, between this and snow season, these are our two peaks of stress. And thankfully, this is like the last, this is the last severe weather threat for us for a little bit. We're going to get a pretty good break most of next week, it looks like. So fantastic. Sean is asking a good question here. How would the storms in Oklahoma affect what happens here? So if those storms, how fast they move in tomorrow is going to affect us, because those storms in Oklahoma right now are going to form into a line and they're going to dance through here around midday. They are that initial 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. time frame line of storms that moves through. If they come through earlier, there's more time for the atmosphere to reload, and then the evening storms would be worse. Maybe some supercells, very low chance, but not completely zero. But if those storms are late, if they take their sweet time getting here, if they don't have much of a cold pool behind them to drive them faster, and they get here later, those initial storms would be stronger, and then the evening storms may not be as bad because those initial storms would be more recent and the atmosphere would be more disturbed and more stable in the aftermath of those. Again, the push and pull sort of thing. So those storms in Oklahoma definitely will affect us in a big way, just kind of setting us up for the evening tomorrow. Let's see. May Ramirez says, could it be possible that the storms from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. run out of gas when it gets closer to southern Indiana? It's possible, yes. And the reason being is because if that initial line of storms moves through later or is more intense and puts down a lot of rain-cooled air, disturbs the atmosphere, that could, kind of put the brakes on that evening round, but we'll just have to see how it unfolds tomorrow. Susan says, thanks for keeping us informed, Ryan. You're very welcome, Susan. Let's see here. Lee says, I hope it busts. Well, darn, I do too. We never cheer on severe weather. We live here. Our families are here. We have interests here that run deep, decades. So we don't want severe weather here. You don't want severe weather here. We're all on the same team in this, right? So I want my forecast to bust, and we have built in a lot of bust potential into this. There's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts. We don't want to sit here and preach to you that this is exactly what will happen, because guess what? We don't know the exactness to the minute of that yet. We don't know which round of storms is going to, kind of bust everything up for the next round. There's there's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts at this point. So tomorrow morning, Tawana will be in. She'll have the latest. And tonight, of course, at 11 too, I'll have a better idea as well with that 0Z data coming in. So I want it to bust too. I want to be wrong here. That would be great. Let's see. I'm going to do two more. So this is kind of the last call here. I won't count this one though. Shonda says, I'll forgive you if it's all a bust. Well, thank you. I hope so. Because I'll be sitting here like dancing around if it's a bust. It'll be good. Okay. I'll bite on this one. Braden, I'm going to call Braden our biggest fan here. Braden Harper from Franklin County. He says, 2 questions. One, is there a chance of the enhanced risk getting upgraded, I should say, to a moderate? So I'll answer that first. There is a chance, but at this point, I think that chance has dwindled a bit compared to yesterday, solely because you have the interaction of the 2 rounds of storms kind of trying to mess each other up, trying to one up another. And that could, result in some uncertainty, some bust potential, especially with that second round. Second round, I still think is going to be the crazier of the bunch because the first round will be weakening as it moves through. But there's still a lot of flex on that, right? And 2, the tornado threat, if there are not supercells, which it's looking more likely that it won't be a supercell day tomorrow, with that kind of potentially in the rearview mirror. Again, I don't want to throw that in the garbage and take it to the curb just yet. That kind of reduces the chance of getting a moderate out of this, I think. But, if this looks like the wind damage potential is going to be even crazier than it looks now, then it's possible they could upgrade it for that reason, all right? Because the main reason we're in the enhanced is because of the wind. All right, so question 2, could the flood watch out west be expanded to include the rest of central Kentucky? Yes, I do expect that we'll get a flood watch down there at some point, especially south of the Western Kentucky and Bluegrass Parkways, but it may include quite a few of our counties, a little closer to Louisville too. We've just had so much rain lately. I mean, it stormed on Wednesday, it stormed on Thursday. A few areas had some storms last night. It's like, gosh, we've got to turn off the fire hose here. Brandon Smith, this is the second to last question, so I'll take one more after this. Asking, will you have the 0Z data on News at 11? Yes, I will, because that's the only thing I'll be able to show at that point, because we've got all our graphics keyed in to show the latest data, so we're not showing old stuff unless there's a good reason to do that. Sometimes that happens. Okay, one more question. I want to make it a good one, so I'm going to scroll back just a bit here. Let's see. I want to make it a good question. Some of these are kind of silly, right? Some people ask silly questions in here. There's a lot of good people in here, though. I mean, like just about everybody's awesome. We have a lot of great viewers here that ask a lot of fantastic questions, but you get those trolls every once in a while, right? Let's scroll down. We've got some new comments that have come in here. Okay, Ashley, yeah, you thought you were the biggest fan. You and Braden are definitely neck and neck there. I'll give you that. Let's see if I can go up even more and get a final question out of you guys here, because I get like this interface that shows everything from all the social media platforms that you guys can comment on. So I can pretty much just sift through all of it, but it's a lot. Okay. Okay. Oh, Cheryl, good question. This is going to be the final one because this is going to make me dig for a graphic here. She's asking about rainfall amounts, which I should have shown. I neglected to because I was so worried about the winds here. Forgive me for leaning off screen. There we go. It's me trying to get access to these rainfall graphics here and typing in the word rainfall. Okay, so let's show you the rainfall. I'm going to show you from the graph model because I think that's doing a pretty good job. I don't love the placement of some of the stuff, but that's a lot of rain. It's showing, this is the graph model here, trying to douse us with like 4+ inches of rain. That would be in an isolated spot. Don't take this as gospel where exactly this is set up, by the way. I'm going to show the HRRR just so you can see different scenarios here, and this will play out too. So this is the HRRR's version of it. I think this is more sensible. I think the graph had an okay handle on the setup. I didn't like how far north it put, some of the storms in the afternoon though. But the rainfall, it might be a little overkill, but I think there will be some 2+ inch amounts, especially in southern Kentucky here. And then with that second line of storms in the evening, it could really douse over Illinois and parts of central Indiana. So these are kind of the rainfall totals that are a little more conservative, but more realistic in my opinion here. A lot of folks are going to see more than 1 inch of rain, and we could get some flash flood warnings even with just that because of how saturated the ground is. All right. Guys, I'm going to leave you here with the 10-day earliest alert here so that you can kind of see that the last gasp of severe weather here is, of course, going to be Sunday, because next week looks pretty tranquil by all accounts. Ta-da, there it is. And I mean, joy. This is a joy to see. Like, temperatures in the mid-70s, plenty of sun, basically Tuesday through Saturday. I mean, that's a great period. That'll be like a vacation around here, right? Based on how bad things have been. The severe weather season. We've had so many events. All right, guys, that's it for now. I'm wave meteorologist Ryan Hoke here in Louisville, Kentucky. We are going to sign off for the evening. If you have not seen something that you asked a question about earlier, or an answer to, this particular broadcast will be available as a recording on YouTube, Facebook, and X, and Twitch too now. Shortly after I go off the air, it'll process, and then you'll see that video so you can scrub through it and see if I answered your question from before. We addressed everything we could within nearly a 1 hour span here. I really appreciate all the 800 plus folks who are with us this evening. If you're local to us here in the Louisville viewing area, watch us on Wave News at 11 tonight. And if you're not, stream us, of course, on our Wave Now app for smart TVs, and of course the Wave Weather app for your phone, and we have the Wave News app for your phone as well, and wave3.com. You can see all of our live streams there. Also, Zeam, Z-E-A-M, is a popular app out there these days for different local news services that you can get kind of streamed to your TV or your phone, so that's a good way to see us too. All right, guys, that's it for now. I'm Wave meteorologist Ryan Hoke, and I will see you back here at 11 o'clock this evening.